Video game atmosphere. It's a very underappreciated thing when it comes to video games because it's something you really don't think about too much, but for some games, it's actually the best thing about them. So today, I'm going to be ranking my favorite atmospheres in the gaming industry, but before we begin, it's worth enlightening you on what types of atmospheres I personally like. So there's two main types of atmospheres that I like seeing in video games. I like beautiful nature with ambient sounds and that kind of stuff, you know what I mean. And ironically, I also love absolute chaos with fast-paced combat, upbeat music, and just overall an environment that's just really masculine and invigorating. Now on to atmospheres that I don't like. I really hate atmospheres where everything is dirty, slimy, and lacking of color. For example, a game like Stray has an atmosphere I simply cannot stand. But yeah, now that I've explained my tastes, let's go ahead and begin. Kicking off the top 10, I chose Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger's atmosphere isn't really incredible or anything, hence the reason why it's not higher on the list, but there is a few things about the game that made me include it. First off, there's a part very early in the game that's just so incredibly immersive. Without spoiling the plot too much, you've just been thrusted into a time period that you don't recognize as your own, as you attempt to rescue a newly introduced friend. The wind is extremely strong as you take in the scenery. Another thing about this game is that the general narrative is that with teamwork, you can change the world for the better. And even when you're down and out and think there's no hope, it's never truly over until you stop trying. Yeah, it's a bit cliche and all, but I believe it to be impactful. Just not anything earth-shattering like some of the others higher on the list. At number 9, I chose Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight's atmosphere comes mostly in the shape of its climates and environments that you'll encounter during your adventure. Similarly to Chrono Trigger, there's this part in Hollow Knight where you visit the City of Tears for the first time. This is probably my favorite place in gaming because it's just so beautiful. With the rain falling in the background, the Baroque architecture, the ambient piano, and the intense sense of loneliness that this game makes you feel. The loneliness isn't just a feature of this one area. It's present throughout the entire game, and I think the game uses that to its strength. It has no problem highlighting that it's just you and nature and nobody else. At number 8, I went with Animal Well. Once again, it's similar to Hollow Knight in the sense that you're meant to feel incredibly alone. This time, there's basically no music, only the sounds of nature to accompany you. And I think this works really well with its graphics, which are inspired by Atari games. It gives you this nostalgia for nature that really can't be replicated from other video games. Maybe a game like Rain World, but even then, this game is a lot more colorful right off the bat. Not much else to say about it other than I could comfortably fall asleep with this game running in the background. Coming in at number 7, I chose Donkey Kong Country. I was initially thinking about putting the second game here because it has better music overall, but after doing some thinking, I think the first game has better ambient music, so it fits this video way better. Donkey Kong Country struggles with level design sometimes, but one thing this game is exceptional at is the atmosphere. The graphics are incredible, and for 1994, the sound effects are elite. And like I said, it's got ambient music that's probably better than any other platforming game. It really makes you feel like you're walking around in a world as opposed to just a level. Even though this game might honestly be the worst game in the Donkey Kong Country series, it still has an incredible atmosphere that cannot be overstated. At number 6, I chose Minecraft, but not just any Minecraft, specifically the original PlayStation 4 version. I know that's specific, but I like Minecraft's atmosphere in general no matter what version it is. But I grew up with this version, and believe it or not, it's still the version I prefer to play. I just feel at home when I'm playing this game. Sure, it's most likely because, like the rest of my generation, I spent thousands of hours with the game, but I still think it's a game that can warm your heart no matter what kind of history you have with it. I know that some of the really old Minecraft versions can kind of give you this uncanny vibe to it all, but I think around 1.15 is the sweet spot for when Minecraft peaked for me personally. I do not play this game too often nowadays, but it's left a permanent stain on me for eternity. At number 5, I went with Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Yet again, another game with beautiful nature, phenomenal music, and great ambient sounds too. I've talked about this game extensively because when it comes to the artistic side of video games, the Will of the Wisps has a lot going for it. It's not the best in terms of bosses and combat mechanics, but its strengths really do show. Unlike Animal Well, which focused on making nature nostalgic, the Will of the Wisps tries to highlight all the different beautiful parts of modern nature, mostly with the game's absolutely incredible incredible lighting physics. Again, I know I'm mentioning nature a lot in this video, but once again, if you're a fan of nature, you will love this game. At number 4, I chose Red Dead Redemption. It's been a bit since I talked about my favorite game of all time, so we might as well. First of all, I'm not saying this game is the best open world or anything, but it is my personal favorite because, yeah, it's not very diverse. It's mostly just desert with one forest area, but it's just so nostalgic for me personally, and say what you want about nostalgia, but I think it's one of the best things a game can do for you. Now, the story of this game is pretty good, I would say, but the reason I love the atmosphere is because of the music. Oh my goodness. It's the best atmospheric music I have ever heard, which does mean that it doesn't really make any sense to listen to it when you aren't playing the game. But still, when you're in the middle of nowhere just exploring, it's so incredibly immersive. Basically, the atmosphere of this game is like your overly stereotypical Western Wonderland, but that's completely fine because, well, I love the Wild West. This is one of those games where even after I've done everything, I'll still enjoy just running around and taking in the incredible scenery the game provides you with. At number 3, I chose Super Mario Galaxy. Yeah, you heard me. Mario Galaxy has a great atmosphere. Now, you might be confused when I say that because this game takes place in space, and space literally has no atmosphere. But hey, you get what I mean. Plus, you're going around visiting planets, so yes, the game does have atmosphere, and damn good atmosphere at that. I mean, you're just going around going from planet to planet. The game is introducing new things to you at a crazy fast speed, and it feels like you're on a treasure hunt to find every last star across the galaxy. Also, the levels are designed to look less like levels and more so like actual places that would make sense to exist, and considering there's not too many NPCs out there to greet you, it once again gives you that loneliness feeling that video games do so well. Also, let's not forget the amazing soundtrack that this game has. Whether you want something silly, curious, or atmospheric, the game has you covered, and the game especially looks incredible on the Nintendo Switch, which is kinda annoying considering you can't even officially purchase the game on Switch anymore. Well, you know what they say, emulation does what Nintendo don't. Coming in at number 2, I chose Super Castlevania IV. Most of the games on this list were either relaxing, beautiful, or impactful, but for the final 2 games on the list, the reasoning for choosing them is pretty simple. These games are just badass. Castlevania is a 2D side-scrolling franchise, or at least was, where you usually play as an absolutely ripped religious guy and you go around destroying monsters in a forbidden castle until you reach the king of evil himself, Dracula. But in the case of Super Castlevania IV, not before you see some of the best visuals from the early 90s and hear some of the best music on the Super Nintendo. And even though I went with this specific Castlevania game, I could honestly just put the entire franchise here. It's just one of the most badass gaming franchises, even if not every new entry is good. Even when there's some games in the franchise that I don't enjoy playing, I still appreciate because of how incredible their atmosphere is. I mean, this game just feeds into my masculine urges. There's just something so meaningful about playing as a righteous being as you send demonic monsters back to where they came. And speaking of that exact thing, at number 1, I chose Doom Eternal. Where do you even begin with an experience like Doom Eternal? First off, I want to be frank and say that I wouldn't say this game is a perfect masterpiece or anything, because it definitely has some mechanical issues, but I don't care, I just don't. When you have a game that gives you a feeling like this, you could have the most flawed combat design in history, and I would still like it. I probably already said this in a previous video, and I'll say it again. Doom Eternal is to me what confession is to a Catholic, because every time I play this game, I feel like I've been forgiven of every sin I've ever committed. Obviously, that's not how it works, but I think you get the joke. In its purest form, Doom Eternal is the struggle between man and demon, good and evil, and also it has an amazing soundtrack too, so yeah. There's not much else to say about Doom Eternal since it's so self-explanatory. It's hatred, yes, but it's justified hatred. Fight fire with fire, you might say. And it's not just the narrative of Doom Eternal that I love, it's the surrounding environments too. They either have beautiful views to take in, or they're just unwelcoming in a good way. All in all, Doom Eternal is one of my favorite games for the narrative and symbolism alone. So that was my list. I'm hoping this video was a pleasant surprise because for a lot of people, they don't really think about atmosphere being more than just, well, the literal definition of it. When I say the atmosphere of a game, I'm not just saying that its world is beautiful, I'm also taking into account the feelings that you might have while experiencing the game, or rather, the feelings that the game is trying to make you feel. Therefore, I think it's more complicated and interesting than most people think. So let me know what your favorite atmospheres in gaming are in the comments. That's it for today, and have a good rest of your day. I did not mean to rhyme that, but I should start saying that more at the end of my videos.